like he just like he was not breathing. So I nudged him like, "Babe, wake up." And then he'd catch his breath. I'm like, "Dude, you just stopped breathing in your sleep." And I saved him.
For nearly 2 decades, Shaquille O'Neal was the closest thing basketball ever had to an unstoppable force of nature. He shattered backboards, bent rims, and made grown professional athletes look small standing next to him in the paint. For championship rings, 3 Finals MVPs, 15 All-Star selections, and a Hall of Fame bust all tell the story of a man who seemed built to dominate forever. But more than a decade removed from his last NBA game, a different kind of story has been unfolding, one that has very little to do with highlight reels and everything to do with the quiet, ongoing work of simply staying healthy. So what has really been happening behind the scenes with Shaquille O'Neal, and why does his own story now sound less like a victory lap and more like a warning? Let's break it down. A body built for dominance, now paying the bill. At 7 feet 1 inch and well over 300 pounds during his playing days, Shaq's entire career was built on force. Every drop step, every collision under the rim, every landing after a dunk sent shockwaves through a frame that was never designed to move that fast for that long. It made him nearly impossible to stop on the court. Off the court, decades later, that same force has left a bill to be paid. In March 2023, O'Neal needed hip replacement surgery, a procedure that sidelined him from his broadcasting job on Inside the NBA for weeks. He was open about it in his own blunt, joking way, telling fans on social media there was no need to worry and poking fun at the situation rather than hiding from it. Still, the message underneath the humor was clear: the wear and tear of 19 NBA seasons does not simply disappear once the uniform comes off. Years later, he has said the surgery changed how he moves through daily life, pushing him to be more careful with high-impact activity instead of testing his body the way he once did without a second thought. The weight battle that almost beat him. Weight has been one of the most public struggles of Shaq's post-retirement life. During his playing years, his listed weight hovered around the mid-300s, already enormous by any standard, but manageable because his career demanded constant conditioning. Retirement removed that built-in discipline, and by his early 50s O'Neal has admitted his weight climbed past 400 pounds, to the point where he struggled to climb a simple flight of stairs. He has described looking in the mirror and not liking what he saw, a moment that pushed him to overhaul his diet and get serious medical guidance rather than chase a quick fix. Through changes to his eating habits and a renewed focus on nutrition, he has spoken about dropping more than 50 pounds, an effort he has continued to build on. It is not a finished project, and he has been candid that he is still working toward the shape he wants, joking at one point that he was only partway to the physique he was aiming for. It marks one of the more disciplined chapters of his post-basketball life, driven less by vanity than by necessity, and he has credited the shift to getting real blood work done and following a nutritionist's guidance rather than chasing quick fixes or fad diets. More recently, he has also talked openly about leaning into recovery-focused treatments as part of an anti-aging routine, another sign that maintaining his health now takes deliberate, ongoing effort rather than something that simply takes care of itself. The sleep apnea confession that changed everything. Of all the health issues Shaq has opened up about, none carries more weight than his battle with obstructive sleep apnea. In recent interviews, he has revealed that he was actually diagnosed with the condition back in 2011, while he was still an active player, but he did not take it seriously at the time. He has talked about being mocked during the later years of his career for getting winded after just a few seconds of running on the court, not realizing that chronic fatigue was tied to something happening every night while he slept. It was only after retirement, once the demands of an NBA schedule no longer masked the symptoms, that the full weight of the condition became impossible to ignore. Obstructive sleep apnea causes the airway to partially or fully close during sleep, interrupting breathing and preventing the body from getting real rest, and O'Neal has described the sensation in blunt terms, comparing it to choking at night. Since then, he has turned the experience into a public health mission. In late 2025, he became the face of a major awareness campaign around sleep apnea in partnership with a pharmaceutical company, using his massive platform to encourage people to get screened for a condition that affects tens of millions of Americans, many of whom never get diagnosed. He has even taken that message to the world stage, appearing at the Winter Olympics in Milan and Cortina as part of an athlete recovery initiative built around the same cause. Turning 54 this past March, Shaq has framed the whole ordeal not as a decline, but as a wake-up call he wishes he had listened to more than a decade earlier, and he has urged fans repeatedly to get checked rather than wait the way he did. It is a striking shift for a man whose entire persona during his playing days was built around never appearing vulnerable. Back then, showing fatigue or asking for help was treated almost like a weakness to be hidden from opponents and cameras alike. Now, in his 50s, he has essentially reversed that instinct, using primetime interviews and a major sponsorship platform to talk in detail about a condition that has nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with basic survival. Doctors and sleep specialists have pointed out that obstructive sleep apnea is especially common among larger, taller individuals, which makes O'Neal, at 7'1", exactly the kind of high-profile example public health campaigns look for. Whether that visibility pushes more people to get screened remains to be seen, but O'Neal himself has said the response from fans reaching out about their own diagnoses has already made the disclosure worthwhile to him. Life after the spotlight, but not out of it. One thing that separates Shaq's story from a lot of retired athletes is that he never really disappeared. He remains a fixture on national television, still trading jokes and breaking down games alongside Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Ernie Johnson, a broadcast crew that has followed him from TNT to its new home. He continues to host Shaq's Fun House, his high-energy Super Bowl weekend festival that has run for close to a decade and pulls in major musical acts and huge crowds every year. Between his broadcasting career, his DJ performances as DJ Diesel, his business ventures, and his constant presence on social media, it would be inaccurate to call his life quiet. If anything, his schedule after retirement looks almost as packed as it did during his playing days, just reshaped around microphones, boardrooms, and stages instead of arenas. What has changed is not his visibility, but his relationship with his own body, and increasingly, his willingness to talk about its limits in public rather than project an image of invincibility. Each February, the Fun House event alone requires him to plan, promote, and physically host a multi-day production involving major headline performers, carnival-style attractions, and thousands of attendees, all while balancing his broadcasting commitments during the same NBA season. That is not the schedule of someone stepping back from public life. It is the schedule of someone trying to figure out how to keep pushing forward while also, for the first time, openly admitting that the body carrying him through it all needs more maintenance than it used to. A business mind as sharp as his post-game. Away from the health headlines, O'Neal built one of the more impressive second careers in sports business. He became an early investor in Google before most people understood what it was, and he has held stakes and endorsement deals across dozens of companies over the years, from Icy Hot to Papa John's to his own Shaq's Big Chicken restaurant chain, which has continued to expand. He holds a doctorate in education, has taught college courses, and has built a media presence that spans television analysis, a popular podcast, DJ sets at major festivals, and a steady stream of business deals. His net worth, estimated at several $100 million, reflects a career that succeeded in the boardroom nearly as much as it did on the hardwood. But even Shaq himself has acknowledged that money and business success were never going to be a cure-all. Wealth could fund the best doctors and the best equipment, but it could not turn back the clock on 19 seasons of collisions, and it could not fully make up for time lost to travel, training camps, and a schedule that rarely stopped. Marriage, family, and learning to show up. Shaq's personal life has had its own well-documented difficulties. His marriage to Shaquille O'Neal, with whom he shares several of his children, ended in divorce in 2011, the same year he retired from basketball. In interviews since, he has been unusually candid about his own shortcomings during that period of his life, at one point reflecting that he was not always the ideal partner in his relationship, and using that honesty as a way of explaining why he tries not to judge other people's family struggles too harshly. Balancing a demanding NBA career, and later an equally demanding media and business career, with being present as a father was not something he has claimed to have gotten right every time. What he has spoken about more recently is the effort to be more available to his adult children now, using the flexibility that comes with life after professional sports to rebuild closeness that a relentless travel schedule made difficult for years. It is not framed as a finished success story, but as ongoing work, the kind that does not come with a trophy at the end. losing the man who raised him. Perhaps the most emotionally complicated part of Shaq's story involves the two father figures in his life. He was raised primarily by his stepfather, Sergeant Philip Harrison, a former U.S. Army sergeant who married his mother, Lucille, and instilled the discipline and structure that Shaq has credited as the foundation of everything he later achieved. Harrison coached his youth teams, enforced strict rules at home, and remained the central authority figure in his life well into adulthood. His biological father, Joe Toney, was largely absent, having struggled with drug addiction and served time in prison shortly after Shaq was born, eventually signing over his parental rights to Harrison. For years, Shaq made no effort to reconnect with Toney, partly out of loyalty to the man who had actually raised him. Everything changed in September 2013, when Harrison passed away after a long battle with illness. Shaq has described that loss as devastating, the disappearance of the steady figure who had shaped nearly every part of who he became. Only later, after some encouragement from his mother, did he finally open the door to his biological father, meeting Toney in person for the first time in 2016 at a restaurant in Newark, New Jersey, just blocks from where Shaq had been living for years without either of them knowing it. Toney passed away in 2023. Looking back, Shaq has said he does not hold on to resentment, framing his life as one that turned out the way it was supposed to, built by the man who chose to raise him rather than the one who shared his blood. A new kind of strength. Taken together, the picture that emerges is not one of a man in crisis, but of someone recalibrating what strength actually means once the applause of an arena is no longer there every night. The sleep apnea diagnosis he ignored for over a decade has become a public cause. The weight that crept up on him in his early 50s has become a documented, ongoing effort rather than a hidden struggle. The hip that finally gave out after absorbing 2 decades of collisions has become a lesson in moving with more care. None of it fits neatly into the old Superman persona that made him famous, and that may be exactly the point. Shaq has increasingly used his platform not to project invincibility, but to be honest about what happens to even the most dominant athletes once the body starts sending its own signals. He continues to work, continues to perform, and continues to show up on screens across the country every week, but he has also made it clear that the version of strength he is chasing now looks a lot less like dunking on defenders and a lot more like getting a health screening he put off for years, eating food that supports rather than works against his body, and trying to be present for the people closest to him while there is still time to do so. His story, at this point, is less a cautionary tale than an ongoing lesson in the making, offered up publicly by a man who spent his career being unwilling to look weak in front of anyone. What do you think about how Shaq has handled these health revelations in real time? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.